Welcome to the chaos sector. As promised, we will examine what appears to be someone edited out of the Linda Lane surveillance. We had to go back and spot it again, like trying to spot a needle in a haystack. It took some time to find it, but the needle's glare in the sun was spotted. This occurred at 2:03 a.m. and 50 seconds. Let's examine. Did you see that? What does that look like to you? Trash? A dust ball? Debris? Perhaps even an animal? Well, I hand it over to our video analysis specialist, who also helped examine the surveillance footage from Crown Plaza Hotel in the Kanika Jenkins murder investigation. It was an exhausting journey, as we examined literally frame by frame, revealing that the surveillance clearly showed Kanika was not alone in those hallways.
Thank you, that was a very stressful case to cover. And to all those who are still genuinely fighting for the truth, we commend your efforts. As many may know, who are still around, our conclusion of that case ended more with a question. Pick your poison was basically the conclusion. Some didn't like that view, while others respected it. So, all in all, we dedicated years to getting justice and revealing the truth. We did what we had to do. I will say that this surveillance footage is real. It is the surveillance from those Linda Lane apartments that captures that specific area visually and audibly. But there is a problem. We had tampered footage, there has been an obvious edit. Let's focus on the edit, which indicates in 4R footage, there may be more. At exactly 2:03 a.m., at 50 seconds, an object appears from the center right side. Notice I used the word, appears, from the center right side. At first glance, it appears to be simply debris, like a piece of trash tumbling across the parking lot. One could even assume it was an animal, such as a kitten, a possum, or even a raccoon. But the color changes, from white, it disappears, then appears again, as a black object, and often disappears and reappears across the parking lot. Finally, it just vanishes behind the left pillar, where the silver vehicle is. But I detected a freeze in the surveillance at this point, yet not the time. The time in the upper left-hand corner continues to tick, but the surveillance freezes momentarily with that object. Then it returns to its normal state, and the object is no longer visible anywhere near that pillar, nor the vehicle. Let's examine the movement and the physical state of this object, in slow motion, to spot the visual evidence of edited footage. Examining the object zoomed in, it appears solid in one instant, but becomes non-solid in another. If something is not solid, then it has to be some form of a light source, such as a shadow. A shadow is not a solid object, it is a reflection. Meaning, the appearance of a solid object, that morphs into a non-solid object visually, is the very evidence of a physical object, being edited out in the surveillance. The physical object, based on the analysis, is more than likely a person. Debris, or trash, would appear to be transparent in motion, but it won't physically disappear. An animal, such as a cat, possum, or raccoon, which are common animals in neighborhoods, can't physically appear and disappear across the driveway. When I say disappear, I mean literally vanish physically. Solid object won't vanish across the driveway and reappear physically. That is something known as teleporting.
There was someone heard running in the surveillance, but they weren't physically spotted doing so. Could it be this very person? And if so, why would they be edited out of the footage? I'm assuming they may have some involvement in the activity that soon unfolded, which would be about 15 minutes later. This editing occurred around 2:03 a.m. There was a female heard, which we assumed had told someone to stop, please stop, around 2:10 a.m. Ethan's name was heard around 2:20 a.m., females are heard yelling, one of them yelled OMG, a male is clearly panicking, so it's possible this person may be involved in all of that activity. What do you think?
Well, there are several reasons for editing someone out of surveillance footage. In traditional practice, privacy masking is used to protect the identities of individuals in surveillance, who are not relevant to the focus of the camera. But we need to distinguish the difference between privacy masking and simply blurring faces or objects out. Body cam footage from police officers often blur the faces out of individuals who are not relevant to the matter at hand, such as an investigation. Privacy masking, on the other hand, utilizes several visual editing techniques to conceal the identity of a person, group of persons, objects, or even buildings. Simply using blocks to cover an area, or a person's face. Blurring can be used, covering a person or group of persons, and even an area. Or, they can use the silhouette technique, which essentially erases the subject out of the surveillance completely. But, referring back to the Crowne Plaza Hotel surveillance footage, they did a horrible job in privacy masking. Because, it was used for malicious reasons. Also, due to the angles of what was physically unfolding in that surveillance, they couldn't successfully erase the presence of someone else, along with Kanika. We saw shadows on the walls, there were dark silhouette-like figures merged with her physical body, and through mirrors, we could see figures that didn't match her reflection in that mirror. When using privacy masking in this manner, they may mask most of the physical evidence of someone there, but all of the remaining physical evidence can't be concealed. So, you end up with fuzzy, blotchy, corrupted surveillance. Also, if you recall, in the lower-level surveillance, near the stairs, Kanika literally just pops up in the surveillance. She is not physically seen walking from the elevators onto the ramp. Similar editing was spotted in the Linda Lane surveillance, as the shape, or shadow, pops up in the center right region in the driveway. It doesn't travel from the far right side, where the dumpster is located off-screen. The object, or shadow, literally pops up out of nowhere. This proves that the person in the surveillance was edited out, while the shadow of that person was also edited. Now you may ask, why didn't they just erase the shadow as well? The privacy masking in this surveillance may result in affecting the vicinity of the physical target, such as a blurry blotch coming across the driveway. Privacy masking is not 100% accurate, as the results vary. If you examine this example of privacy masking, it masks the majority of the employee's body, but his hand is not masked. This may be due to the variation of physical movement his hand has, compared to the rest of his body. So, the masking can't essentially cover that hand completely, as it's in constant motion in surveillance. The variation of its movement, such as fingers, and slight position changes, make masking the hand virtually impossible. Once again, referring back to the Crowne Plaza surveillance, a similar problem exists there. They couldn't mask every physical segment of the perpetrators, because the variation in their movement compromised the masking's ability to track it. So as a result, they just blotched everything, which only magnified the editing. Crowne Plaza Hotel and Rosemont PD reviewed the masking being processed the first time, which to them appeared convincing enough. And similar in the Linda Lane surveillance, they also assumed it was convincing. Like mentioned, it could be depicted as some sort of debris, or an animal passing by. To the naked eye, of course. But for those who examine surveillance, and have experience in detecting edited footage, well, it's obvious to us in that field. So, I believe the individual has been edited out, because whoever they are, may be involved in the murders. Perhaps they had on all black clothing, and white tennis shoes. An odd combination, but there is a reason for that. It could be a signal of who is who, out there in the darkness. He obviously would have a specific role, and his white tennis shoes act as an identifier. I don't think this person was inside the house though, obviously with white tennis shoes on. He was snooping around at night, in the neighborhood, with those white tennis shoes on. And the perpetrators would know where is located in that darkness. He didn't communicate through talking, he communicated with his white tennis shoes. Just a theory, of course.
No, I agree, that aligns with the strategic planning of those murders. A guy in all black, with white sneakers at night, communicating with other perpetrators, with those very visible white sneakers at night. He wouldn't say anything, just lurk around. I get it completely. Since you mentioned that Crowne Plaza surveillance, I'll just revisit one of the most key pieces of visual evidence. In the kitchen where she was discovered deceased in the freezer, the window in the office to the left side was blotched out, to protect the visual evidence of who was with her. You can't edit through a window, such as editing the physical movement of anyone walking around that corner, but you can place something visually there to obstruct the view. So they had to blotch it out completely. This screenshot of that surveillance displays the window of the office, which appears to show no signs of editing. But if you zoom into that region, during playback of that surveillance, which we did hundreds of times, you will observe that the outer window is clearly covered by a huge blotch. There is also a black line along the outer region of the window, which is clearly a sign of something being concealed. Now, since this is in the physical space of the kitchen, not through the window, it is easier to simply use a masking technique to conceal what, or who, that is. Similar to a mirror, you can't edit through objects or surfaces that display the reflection of the physical object or activity in real time captured in surveillance. And I detect similar editing techniques in this Linda Lane surveillance. It is not a cat, possum, raccoon, debris, trash, dust ball, leaves, any of that. It is in fact a shadow of someone appearing to be walking across the driveway. Now, if this person has been edited out of the surveillance around 2:03 a.m. and Ethan's name was heard around 2:21 a.m. along with the OMG and the yelling, we have to assume that individual edited out has to be linked to that very activity.
I would assume so. Some may suggest that the object is in fact some sort of animal, such as a cat, moving across very quickly, which creates the blurry effect during motion. Speed does create a blur during motion, but let's make sure we understand the difference. Here is a photo of a cat running. Now of course it's running, so the camera would process each frame of movement. Since the cat is running, which is quick movement across the driveway, the camera captures a lot of motion blur of the cat's movement. But, this motion blur does not create the visual effect of the cat becoming invisible. The only way this is possible is that cat would have to be moving so fast that the camera can't even process its movement. No cat can move that fast. So we know based on physics here that this object is not an animal such as a cat. It is a shadow that they tried to disguise as the aforementioned objects, such as debris or an animal. I think the individual who has been edited out may be a suspect. I question the release of the surveillance, as the authorities didn't release it, nor was it even examined by the mainstream media. Surely they have become aware of its leak. It's quite odd, don't you think? It was this very Linda Lane surveillance footage that spotted the alleged coworker driving in the parking lot at 4:05 a.m., right? Yet no coverage of this from the mainstream media. Nor from Moscow PD. Is it because they don't want to bring attention to all of the other audible evidence of attacks that happened prior to his alleged presence? I'm guessing so. If you take away all of the yelling, even screaming, and Ethan's name being heard prior, and it only consists of the alleged coworker spotted at 4:05 a.m., I'm sure this would have been all over the mainstream media. Which supports the belief that not only did the murders occur earlier than the alleged coworker's presence in this surveillance, but the most important, Moscow PD, and the media, know this based on that surveillance. I can't believe they have done this. Once again, Crowne Plaza and Rosemont PD covered up the murder of Kanika Jenkins. Because there was surveillance, they had to edit the surveillance to hide the evidence that proved she was murdered. When there is a cover-up, such as with that case, and the Idaho murders case, any physical evidence such as surveillance, or even audio, will be edited. I would even suggest that there is more editing in that Linda Lane surveillance, just have to examine all of the video footage.
Oh yeah, more than likely. Well, thanks for the analysis.
No problem, anytime.
What do you guys think? Is this someone who has been edited out of the footage? All of the physical evidence suggests so. And, the time frame of this edit aligns with the attacks upon Ethan, which were about 15 to 20 minutes later. I believe they are a suspect, and this is why they were edited out. The guy in the white hoodie was also spotted by both cameras in Linda Lane apartments, remember? Yet he wasn't edited out. And it would be just as logical to do so, assuming he had been involved in some sort of drug transaction. So it appears this person is a suspect, based on all the audio evidence we've analyzed in the previous episode. As we say here at the Chaos Sector, truth has no filters, nor can it be held back. This is the Chaos Sector.